What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Golf 360 podcast. I'm the host, Pete Popovich. So you may be wondering what Golf 360 is, and I came up with it and the name after spending over 30 years and a lifetime in golf, in and around the game, in all facets and levels, and I have come in contact with, become friends with, learn from, pick the brains of, etc., a bunch of different people within the industry, outside of the industry, all who have exceptional knowledge, information, experiences, etc., to pass along to make me better in the game when I was playing it, or outside the game in the business that I've been involved in, on the teaching side, etc. So because there were so many different people that I had access to and was fortunate enough to have access to, I thought, if this is an all-encompassing podcast, why not, and it's golf related, why not call it Golf 360? So hence the name. The one thing that I've found out about all these people that are going to be guests on the show is they had two common denominators. One, they were very highly accomplished and exceptional at what they did in their field. The second was they were more than willing to share their knowledge, their experiences, their pearls of wisdom with me and many others who were more than willing to learn and improve themselves, be it in their games, their businesses, their life, or what have you. So I hope that you're going to enjoy listening to the show, to each and every one of the guests that I have on the show, and that you're able to utilize information that they give, whether it's a story or an experience or what have you, so that you can continue to improve at your game and at life. This podcast is brought to you in part by Old South Golf Links. A short ride across a bridge from Hilton Head Island is one of the area's finest golf courses and a hidden treasure. Set up on towering pines and ancient oaks with sweeping arch vistas, truly makes Old South Golf Links a one-of-a-kind golfing experience. The Clyde Johnson design was named one of the top 10 new public courses when it opened, and it also takes full advantage of the natural beauty of the Low Country. Old South is a fun and unique challenge for golfers of every skill level and a favorite of both locals and visitors. Whether it's your first time here or you're a regular, you'll be treated and feel like family. From the bag drop to check-in at the fully stocked pro shop with both men's and women's apparel, to breakfast or lunch before or after your round, the staff is always ready and willing to help. Experience for yourself why Old South is one of the premier golf courses in the Hilton Head area and why it will quickly become a favorite of yours too. Visit them in person or online at www.oldsouthgolf.com, or to make it tee time, simply call the pro shop at 843-785-5353. Today I have a very special guest, and he is United States Marine Corps retired Colonel Andrew Drew Smith. So some of you out there might be thinking to yourself, well, what the heck does a Colonel in Marine Corps retired have to do with the game of golf? And it's funny that some of you might be thinking that, because Colonel Smith actually asked me the same thing. If I can just back up a little bit. So we had met through a mutual friend, Andy Hinson, who is the director of golf at the Legends of Paris Island. And Andy said he thought that Colonel Smith would be a great guest to have on the show. And I said, absolutely, I'd love to have him. And Colonel Smith agreed to be on. And then as I reached out to him sometime later, he had some hesitation. And it was only hesitation because he's so conscientious and wants to make sure that he provides value to whatever he's doing, that he told me, he said, look, I'm not sure I understand how a Marine and a golf podcast can kind of go together. I'm really not sure that I'm the best guy to do this. So I asked him to join me for lunch one day, and during the course of the conversation, I said, are you a golfer? And he said, of course. And he's a fanatical golfer. He loves the game. We get into that in the interview as well. And I said, okay, let me ask you a second question. When you're playing, do you have the discipline to stick to your routine? And he said, well, I have one, but I'm really not disciplined enough as I should be in staying consistent with it. And I said, okay, let me ask you one last question. What organization around the world is known for their discipline and their ability to maintain their routines? And he got a big smile on his face. He said, you're right, I'm in. So for those of you who might be unfamiliar with some things in the military, the Marine Corps is known around with most everybody in the country and around the world to be one of the most disciplined branches of military and to stick to their routines very strictly. And of course, for anyone that plays golf, you know that is one of the most important things you do. So not only do we do it or have a lot of discussion on disciplines, routine, and preparedness and why they're so important. We go back to the beginnings of it, the genesis of it, how to develop it, the importance of those things, etc. But we talk about a whole bunch of other things. We get into leadership and trust, whether you're in an organization, you're in a golf facility, you're a player and a caddy, coach and a player, whatever the situation, we get into that. We get into his playing career, his career and its advancement throughout the Marine Corps, plus a whole ton of other things that I'm sure everybody, whether you're a golfer or not, you're going to love listening to him. He's a great guy. He's a phenomenal leader, and I was very, very fortunate to get the chance to sit down in front of him to do this interview. So I hope you find it as entertaining and informative as I did in talking to him. So without further hesitation, let's get into my interview with retired Colonel Drew Smith. Here with Colonel Drew Smith, retired United States Marine Corps. Thank you for taking the time to do this, by the way.
My pleasure.
Before I get any further. But in preparing for this interview, finding information on you is extremely difficult, and you're a ghost, which I would think for you, you're very happy with the fact that that's an issue, or an issue for me, but not an issue for you.
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with that. Yeah, and LinkedIn is my primary social media, professional media source. So, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I wish I had not discovered social media. It becomes, you have to have it for things like this and to push interviews out and so forth. But sometimes it'd be nice to take my phone and throw it right out in that water right there.
I'm with you. Yep.
So let's just, there's an obvious tie that you and I have talked about between golf and the military and the Marines in particular. But I'd like to start from the beginning. And this, I had this question down, but it was submitted by a number of people. Is what was your fascination and why the Marine Corps?
Well, I come from a family of Marines. So my father served over 30 years in the Marine Corps. I've got a brother who's 2 years older than me that is still active in the United States Marine Corps. I've got a son that is a corporal in the United States Marine Corps. But from my earliest days, I've been exposed to Marines, and what attracted me to the Marine Corps, one, I had an absolutely superb role model, very fortunate to have a father that was a terrific father and also a very fine Marine. And he served honorably again for over 30 years. He was a World War II, Korea, and Vietnam veteran. He was an infantryman in those conflicts. So, very fortunate in that regard. And just my exposure to him and the exposure, I will tell you a significant aspect, it was my exposure to many of his peers, his contemporaries. And these were Marines that were not only, the best Marines in terms of their skill, their technical and tactical skill, but they were fine gentlemen. That's what one of the many things that I appreciated about them. These were fine men, and just through my exposure to them and their natural interest and desire to mentor young men and young women, that was something that made the Marine Corps an attractive option for me. And there was absolutely zero pressure growing up to be a Marine on both my brother and I. It was a personal decision, and one that I would do all over again if I had the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting that you see your own parents and you see what they do, but it almost you grew up with it, right? As you progress, it's like, okay, that's what mom does, that's what dad does. Like you said, when you see their contemporaries and what they personify and what they represent and so forth, then you start to put the two together, and you might even shed your parents in a different light where you gain more respect for them. It sounds like that maybe.
Absolutely. I think not only, certainly for the Marine and their dedication and service to their country, and but also the dedication of military families as a whole, and in our case, it was a Marine family. But I'm one of 4 children, and I had a mother that focused on taking care of the home front while my dad was often deployed. So it's a team effort, and they're certainly their love and respect and appreciation for each other and support of each other through some pretty demanding times. I mean, year-long deployments to combat, overseas deployments where the service member has to go overseas unaccompanied. In my case, it was my mother that was taking care of the household, and but when they certainly were together, they were a great role model for their kids. So, yeah.
Perfect balance, sounds like, between the two.
Right, absolutely.
They understood what each wanted, or they had a common goal, and they understood what each was going to do, their role, so to speak.
And they understood the values and principles that they wanted to instill in their children. So regardless of whether they were together or apart, those values and principles, remained.
They were what they were, and that's what
that's
you were
right.
going to live by.
And they were enforced and reinforced. Yeah.
Did you grow up in one area, or was your dad stationed in different areas? Did you move around a lot, or
Initially, I did. I will tell you, I was born outside of Chicago. My father was at Northwestern as an instructor. I was born probably in the last year of his 3-year tour there. 8 months later, after my birth, I was in Seoul, South Korea, where he was serving with the ROK Marine Corps. Then we were back predominantly on the East Coast, Virginia, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, back and forth, and then eventually out to Hawaii. So I was in elementary school when we got out to Hawaii, and that's where he decided to retire. And my mother had a education degree, and where she kind of picked up on her interests and taught high school. And she was a advanced placement English teacher, but she taught not only AP students, but she was very interested and dedicated to teaching many of the kids that came from the Southwest Pacific, so from Samoa and Tonga, Micronesia, Thailand, from the Far East, that made their way to Hawaii. So she taught kind of the spectrum of English as a teacher. But Hawaii was where we ended up settling
that's where
down.
You grew up,
and that's
mostly?
where I grew up. Yes, yeah, and right outside of the Marine Corps Air Station there at Kaneohe Bay.
Not a bad place to grow up.
Not a bad place to grow up. Yeah, yeah.
You get in any trouble?
I
I couldn't imagine a son of a Marine getting it. Well, there's the adventure side, and then there's the if I do this, I get caught.
It depends on how you define trouble, but it was a great place to grow up. It was different in many respects from what maybe the high school, elementary, junior high, and high school kid would experience on the mainland United States. But it was one that I don't regret at all and would not change. It was a great experience growing up in Hawaii. Yeah.
When did you make the decision, or start to make the decision to consider the Marines as a career?
Well, it was my family was transitioning out of Hawaii at that point. I was the last out of the house. I think my parents, and very very quickly, my parents were seeing the children now move away from Hawaii, and with the prospect of grandkids, and it was just they found it was in their best interest to come out of Hawaii, and they moved to Southern California. When I was leaving Hawaii to go to college, I was interested in at least looking into the Naval Recruit Officer Training Corps program, and there was some interest there because one was financially, you could, if you worked hard and got a scholarship, the Naval Recruit Officer Training program would pay for your schooling, and it was something, again, there was interest already in perhaps at least starting out with a commission in the Marine Corps, and then finding out what else life might offer. As I've talked to many officers over my career, and many that were senior to me, as I looked for their insight, many of them would kind of describe it as I was always interested in what was over the next ridge line. So that's what kind of kept me in the Marine Corps, and I can relate to that almost exactly.
Sense of adventure.
I kept on finding something interesting in the next step.
So, if you would speak to your from the beginning, your progression through,
Sure.
The work involved, your accomplishments, your challenges, how you overcame those, and so forth, if you don't mind.
So I was commissioned in May of 1987 from the University of Oklahoma. So that's always an interesting aspect of the conversation. How do you come from Hawaii to Oklahoma? But Oklahoma had a great naval recruit officer training program, and it had the prospect of perhaps getting a scholarship and taking that financial burden off my parents was important to me.
So you went in, not to cut you off, but you went in right out of high school?
I went from high school. I went right to the University of Oklahoma. Right.
Okay.
And coincidentally, my parents were transitioning out of Hawaii. They were returning to the mainland and going to Southern California. And there was some family, her father, my mother's father, was getting older. There was a need to support kind of his care. So it was just kind of coincided. But when I graduated from the University of Oklahoma, I was immediately commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps, and within a matter of a few short weeks, I was in Quantico, Virginia, which I know very well, having spent some time there as a youngster, and entered into the basic school. Now, during my college career, you have to go to officer candidate school, and that is a screening, and I mean that's where they weed those out that may not be able to take on the responsibilities, leadership, and physical demands of being a Marine officer. And so OCS was completed while I was in college, and then upon receiving my degree, I reported into the basic school in Quantico, and that's where every Marine officer, and that's what the Marine Corps prides itself, one of its great attributes is that every Marine officer goes through the basic school, where you learn the fundamentals of being a Marine officer, to include being an infantry platoon commander.
So is that different than what I guess is the GI Bill, where most of the, I shouldn't say most, but some of the men and women that go in now, that they'll serve maybe 4 years or how many ever years they serve, then go to college? Was it different then, or is the program you have?
It is. What you're describing is a young man or woman that enlists in the Marine Corps. They actually receive they execute an enlistment, and then they can either as active duty Marines, or if they choose to depart the Marine Corps and pursue a degree, a 4-year degree, they can, upon achieving that 4-year degree, they can receive a commission in the Marine Corps as long as they meet all the other entry or entrance standards. In my case, again, I went to officer candidate school while I was in college, and then upon graduation and receiving my degree, I was commissioned. I received my commission, and that's when I reported to Quantico. So there are differences there, and there are several programs for young enlisted Marines to compete, and they are very competitive for an opportunity to go to a 4-year university in the United States and receive their degree as an active duty Marine enlisted Marine, and then receive their commission, and then go on into the officer ranks, what we would call a Mustang.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So you're, I don't want to say, well, with your background, your dad and your family being in it, were you more comfortable once you had to go through, let's say, the boot camp phases and then progress through, because you had been exposed to that your whole life, and you'd been around the dinner table with your dad's contemporaries and so forth, or were you where it wasn't as much of a challenge as someone that's family doesn't have anything to do with the military, and then they go into the Marines, and now this is a whole new world for them? Do you think that helped you? I mean, obviously it probably did, but...
Yeah, I think, absolutely, I do think it helped me. I had some insight into what the Marine Corps was as an organization, its standards, the expectation of Marines. So that certainly was a benefit. I'll tell you that while I had some of that kind of inside baseball, I had some of that, I had some insight. The Marine Corps, while it respects the fact that you may come from a Marine family, in my case, each Marine officer has to prove himself or herself capable of serving as a Marine officer. And so from a mental standpoint, from a intellect standpoint, from a physical standpoint, all that, it was game day.
Everyone's starting at
That's right.
0.
And you earn it every day. At least you're expected to earn it every day. So, but yeah, it was certainly helpful. And I will tell you that having a brother 2 years older than I, who also was commissioned in the Marine Corps, I had the luxury, I had the benefit of being able to have conversations with him, and he was a bit of a pathfinder, if you will, on occasions, and I certainly would seek his advice on, and I appreciated his input on, hey, just pay particular attention to this, or make sure you're doing that, or so that was always helpful.
Kind of the nuances of
Yeah.
the best way to go about it.
Yeah. Now I know many officers that have not had, for instance, that luxury, and that I have absolutely tremendous respect for, and I think their perspective was probably one of, this is, while it's all new, it's exciting, and it's what I want to do, and they were just as, if not more, successful because of their own motivation and desire to serve to the very best of their ability. So
you obviously achieved a very high level of success. Colonel was your rank when you retired.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find yourself striving to have the achievement, or did you find yourself following the processes that are instilled in you from the day you were, in your case, from when you're a young boy and grow up and you have a military father, and then you're in boot camp and you follow the processes? So were you more of, I want to achieve X level, or were you more, I'm going to follow this process and someday I will get to that level, but I'm going to focus on what's in front of me, as opposed to I'm got a goal that I want to reach?
I think that's a very good question, and I think there's a couple ways to answer it. But the best way I would answer that is to say that I think the touchstone for the Marine Corps is leadership. It is about leading Marines and getting the mission accomplished, whatever that mission might be. So it's leading and taking care of your Marines. And oftentimes you'll hear kind of the adage, mission first and Marines always, and that's that. I think those are kind of good touchstones for any Marine leader, regardless of whether they're a commissioned officer or an enlisted Marine. I did set goals throughout my career. There was, for instance, when I went to the basic school, you don't have a military occupational specialty, an MOS, when you first go to the basic school. You actually you go through about 2/3 of the basic school, which is about 6 months long, and then you're assigned an MOS. And then oftentimes it's done on a quality spread. And one of the first things that I wanted to do, the first goal was to become an infantry officer. And there was not necessarily a guarantee. My performance, my expressed desire to be an infantry officer was going to be important to that, but there was no guarantee that at the end of the day, once the selection came out, that I would be an infantry officer. You actually have to pick 3. I picked being an infantry officer first, an artilleryman, and then a tanker. My staff platoon commander didn't particularly like the fact that on my initial submission I put infantry. He said, "Smith, that's not going to work. You got to give me 3 different ones." So I did. But then I had goals throughout. I wanted to, again, be an infantry officer. I wanted to certainly command an infantry platoon, and then I had a very strong aspiration to command a rifle company. I had an interest in being a battalion operations officer, and then a battalion executive officer. And while these positions may seem somewhat natural in the progression of a Marine officer as they continue in their career, there are no guarantees. So I think the important thing there was to perform. My father always said, you can't argue with performance.
Mm-hmm.
Performance is what it is, and I worked hard to perform, take care of my Marines, and do the very best I could, and then make sure people understood what my goals and aspirations were.
So yeah, that kind of is a good segue into the next section, where we talk about the routines and the discipline and the preparation, and I'll go back to when we first talked about you being a guest, and it was in true leadership fashion. I think your question was somewhat to the effect of, well, what could I, as a former Marine, or let me take that back, once a Marine, always a Marine,
right,
as a Marine, offer to a golf podcast, and explain, well, the the name of the podcast is 360, so it's all encompassing, and golfers are continually told, follow your routine, have the discipline to do so, one shot at a time, one hole at a time, and then when you're done, you calculate your score and so forth. So what better person to talk to than someone who actually did that for a livelihood? And how many times do you get to sit down with a colonel? So that's an added benefit.
I can point you in the direction. There's a number out there, but yeah.
But before we get into that, I just want to go into what was very interesting that I found out about the Marine Corps. The local PGA, we had an opportunity to do a half a day in the life of Marines set up through Paris Island and Andy Hinson, the director of golf. And it was amazing to me. You know, you're watching all the men and women go through the, and particularly the obstacle course and the physical training and so forth. Mm-hmm. And we're watching this from afar. And then we had a chance to go down onto the obstacle course and even go on a few of the obstacles. But you're walking by these kids, and that's what they really are. I mean, they're 17, 18, 19 years old.
Right.
Still pimples on their face. And it's reality kind of hits you like, wow, these are just young kids. I'm 40-some years old. I'm old enough to be their parent. And it's amazing. And the responsibility that they're given and learning that. So I guess what I'm getting at is when you take somebody, and I can remember what it's like to be 17 years old. Can you speak to how routines are developed, the discipline that's utilized to do that, and in particular from a Marine Corps standpoint?
Sure. One of the first things I would say, Pete, is that for Marines, discipline is very much a hallmark of being a Marine. Closely tied to that are the values of being a Marine, and in there's a passion for the Marine Corps, for service as a Marine, and all that our Marine Corps represents to its nation. It's long been used, but the nation doesn't necessarily need a Marine Corps. It wants one, and it wants one because of the values and principles that Marines live by, and the Marine Corps' proven performance in the service of the nation in peace and in war. So those values are very important. Now, to the discipline of a Marine, young Marines, enlisted Marines come to either Paris Island, South Carolina, or they go out to San Diego, California, and that's where they go through recruit training. And
that's Camp Pendleton?
San Diego is about an hour just south. The recruit depot in San Diego is about 50 minutes to an hour south of Camp Pendleton. So it's actually right in the heart of San Diego for all intents and purposes, right adjacent to the airport, and it's a historical location. But both recruit depots produce anywhere from 18 to 20,000 Marines a year, new Marines. From the day that a Marine steps off the bus onto the yellow footprints, they are being instilled with the discipline that is required of being a Marine, and concurrently those core values of honor, courage, and commitment that are required of being a Marine. And how do you instill that discipline? It gets to some of what some might today call the old-fashioned instant obedience to orders, attention to detail, executing as a team, performing as a team. Again, attention to detail, taking care of small things, because if you take care of the small things, again, another cliche, but it means something. The larger picture will take care of itself, and you can make some correlation there with respect to the golf game.
Right.
And so in the golf swing, what have you. But from day one, a Marine is being instilled with a level of discipline that is requisite to serve as a United States Marine, and that discipline is not only gets to their physical ability. We're elevating their physical ability, getting them in shape so they can endure the hardships of being a Marine, and fitness is very much a part of being a Marine. It's the understanding of what is the high moral standards of being a Marine. I will tell you that that has always been very important to me and to the commanders that I've worked for and the Marines that I've served with, because having high standards and high moral standards. When you go to less than pleasant places and perform or you're participating in combat operations, that can be very trying on individual Marines, and it can you're going to see and do and experience things that can start to you need that high standard. You need that kind of foundation of values and principles and physical fitness and discipline to help kind of carry you through those type of things. I'll just add that combat has a propensity to wear at those things, and mm-hmm. Things like not dehumanizing the enemy and ensuring that the civilians in their respective combat zone are being properly treated and we avoid any collateral damage while we are trying to perform the mission that we've been assigned, whether that is the Marine mission of, for instance, the rifle squad of locating, closing with, and destroying the enemy, or providing security to an area so that it can be safe and secure for its inhabitants, and that government and security forces can start to take root and be able to provide for their own. So so the discipline in both from a physical and a execution standpoint and a moral standpoint is all very important to being a Marine, and that begins right at boot camp, and it begins certainly at the officer candidate school. Although there is an expectation, and we do this through our recruiting forces, that those that are standing on the yellow footprints or getting off the bus at officer candidate school have come with at least a solid foundation of those qualities and values and characteristics.
So from the recruiting perspective, when men and women go to recruiting station, the questions and the Marines who are there asking the questions and talking to them, that there is a weeding out process that begins at
there
right
is. There. I spent 3 years on recruiting duty. I spent 3.5 years in the recruit training business at the recruit depot in San Diego. But relative to recruiting, the recruiting force, every young man and woman that we contact and that is interested or that we're trying to spark interest in terms of service in the Marine Corps goes through a screening process, and they're screened not only for their level of intellect. They take the ASVAB, and the Marine Corps has probably upwards of 98% high school graduates. In other words, they are diploma carrying graduates, which to the Marine Corps says that this young man or woman can commit themselves to a 4-year effort and come out on the other end with having accomplished what they set out to do, and that's a big indication of that young man or woman's level of commitment and ability to serve as a Marine. So they are screened. They're screened morally. What type of background do they have? If they had a lot of police involvement, they're certainly screened from a illegal drug use standpoint. And then they're screened physically. Are they capable of at least beginning training and be able to undergo the rigors of that training? And I'll just add that the recruiting force, once a young man or woman has signed on the dotted line, so to speak, has the responsibility of continuing to prepare that young man or woman until they actually show up at the recruit depots. And sometimes that can be from anywhere from 90 days to up to upwards of 6 months, depending upon when their ship date is. So.
The schooling and so forth, other
right.
responsibilities. This next question might sound very simple in elementary and even generic, but I think as we're talking, it's some of those things, the simple things like we talked about before we came on. Admiral, is it? I got it written.
McRaven.
McRaven.
Yeah.
His commencement speech at the University of Texas, that now I think is over 8 million views. But the smallest things like, excuse me, making your bed in the morning, and that if you, like you said, if you can't accomplish the smallest thing, you can't accomplish the biggest things. And small things add up progressively. And if you accomplish something first thing in the morning, then the next thing becomes easier, and next thing becomes easier, and it's almost like an avalanche effect.
Right.
And he goes on and on. If anyone hasn't seen that, I'll put that in the show notes, and they can check that out. It's a very, very cool speech. But getting back to simplicity is the question is why are routines so important?
Well, I think as Admiral Craven does a exceptional job in bringing out relative to making your bed every morning. One, it reinforces the discipline that you have as a person. You make that bed, as he describes. If nothing else, no matter how your day goes, you come back to a made bed. And I think most people would, if they look into a room and they see a bed that's not made, and you can draw some conclusions from that. Although you have to temper that. But if you see a made bed, and you probably have a pretty good idea of, or you're getting a better idea of how that person thinks about themselves and their environment, and maybe even respect for their family and for the values and principles that are within the family. But getting to the routine, I think it's important. Taking care of those small things and almost making those second nature, then allow you to do those things again, second nature, and stay focused on maybe the bigger picture. And oftentimes you'll find that you're more efficient because you've built those kind of disciplines into your life. We Marines particularly, we do things. We do drills. We do things over and over in terms of whether it's machine gun training or squad tactics. And I'm speaking principally from an infantryman's perspective, but you can relate to any military occupation, relate this point to any military occupational specialty, whether it's somebody that is a mechanic or an avionics technician, and what they do in terms of, for instance, entering the fuselage of an airplane, what tools they use, and how they go through that process, and then at the end ensure that airplane is returned to its proper state, and that all those tools are accounted for, so that they might not become a hazard to the aircraft at a later point or to the flight line. So you can relate this across the Marine Corps and probably across many types of organizations and walks of life. But again, paying attention to those small things and having practice, rehearsed, reinforced this discipline of execution, if you will, makes it become second nature. So coming back to the infantry, when an infantry officer, I'll just use that example, is going to, for instance, establish a defense, there are certain things that officer will think about right away as he's moving on to that piece of ground, so to speak, to establish a defense. And I'm speaking maybe of a rifle company that is going to set in on a hilltop or on a ridgeline or something. There's certain things that he's going to immediately think about. Security being one, and then he's going to position certain weapon systems in certain locations, and then he's going to lay out how his organization is going to be set in for that night, and then he's going to put a priority of effort in terms of what they're going to be doing for the next several hours, and by doing that, all that is coming kind of second nature to him. These are things that he's been trained, or she has been trained to do. They are, again, second nature, and that person, that Marine, is able to then lead their organization efficiently. Therein, Marines look at that leader as having not only the tactical and technical competence, but also the confidence in themselves and being able to lead the organization. So there's a lot of interrelationship there. But coming back to it, that discipline of doing things over and over to where they become second nature, and you establish, either for your organization or for yourself, a standard. And coming back to Admiral Craven's use of the bed as a good example of discipline, you have it right when, if you get up in the morning and you haven't made your bed and it's gnawing at you a little bit, and instead of walking out the door, you go back and you make your bed.
Right.
And I think that's foundational to, I think, success in a lot of walks of life.
In relating to golf, when people will come into a school or a lesson and so forth, and you start to establish a pre-shot routine, and they're very sometimes apprehensive or want to buck that trend or what have you, and they, well, why do I need this? And so, I mean, for a basic standpoint in golf, it's like, okay, when you get out there, if you're trying to break 90, you're trying to break 100, or whatever you're trying to accomplish for the first time, the nerves kick in, they go in overdrive, adrenaline pump. I mean, you're not yourself. You're not, what you feel now is not anything like when you're going to try to accomplish something. And at least your routine will give you a sense of some comfort in a very uncomfortable situation. So is there any similarity between that and the routines that y'all develop in the Marine
Absolutely.
Corps?
I think it's not only physical muscle memory in terms of the routine, but it's the mental muscle memory. And we've all seen, so specifically, relative to golf, we've all seen when we've watched, on the PGA where a pro, something bothers him. Either he's on the tee box or he's on the, he's on a green getting ready to, he's positioning himself for his putt, and so something happens, a butterfly lands on his golf ball or something. You see how he kind of resets or she resets. They actually come out of their stance. They oftentimes, if it's a part of their routine, they'll get behind the ball again and look down the line, and they will then reestablish themselves in order to execute that particular shot. That makes complete sense to me, as I know it does a lot of golfers. And there might be some out there that say, just pull the trigger on it, come on. But to that golfer who's obviously taking, one, enjoys the game, wants to be competitive at it, is taking it seriously, they're preparing themselves again, setting the best conditions they can to execute that shot. That is very important. There's a mental aspect to that as well. And coming back to the Marine Corps, one of the many things that I think the Marine Corps does well in terms of educating its Marines is it asks Marines to read, because through reading, whether it's history, or reviewing of previous conflicts, you're able to see, or you're able to perhaps pick up some patterns of things. And pattern recognition, I think, while there's been a lot of theory on it, I think it means something. There's something there. So let's relate that back to golf. I'll stay on the point about the military training first. We train Marine leaders to be able to look at a situation, and they can pick up on elements of that particular situation. If they're looking at a map and they see terrain, and there's an enemy situation, as best that they can identify through intelligence, and they've kind of mapped that out, they are able to look at that and see what they have. There's an intuition there about what perhaps they need to do, and an enemy command post being located here, an enemy indirect fire system, for instance, mortars or howitzers being located at this particular position, and that leader is going through an assessment of what is that's their command and control mode. What is most dangerous to my organization, and what do I need to probably address first through my ability to accomplish this mission? Well, on the golf course, I think we've all stood up on golf holes and seen where a golf hole meets our eye or fits our eye, and we feel very comfortable. And in those cases, it becomes second nature, where we just tee the ball up and oftentimes just put a really good swing on it, and we hit it where we want to. And then there are those holes that we've all experienced where it just doesn't seem to fit our eye. So we have to work a little bit harder to understand to where we want to place that golf ball. And then we have to have the personal discipline, both the mental and physical discipline to put a good swing on.
To execute.
That's right, to execute. And oftentimes execution in golf, as I think I know I've come to realize, and I think a lot of golfers do, is that even though the mental process is very strong, you still have to have the discipline to keep the golf swing free, and to free it up, to allow your natural ability to come through, rather than trying to manufacture or guide that golf ball, which oftentimes results in something.
In golf, there's a definite. You develop your plan. Okay, I'm going to hit it on this side of the fairway. I'm going to hit this subtle cut on whatever shot you're going to hit. But then the transition between that and the execution of it, there's the commitment of it.
That's right.
You got to commit to it, regardless of how uncomfortable the outside variables are. And from listening to what you just gone over on the Marines, it sounds like it's almost identical.
It's very close. again, another perhaps cliche, but you develop a plan and you support it, and then don't fight it. Execute the plan. The important point is that you've put the effort forward as much time as you have available, and resources that you have available. You've put the thought into what you want to do, and what is the priority of your effort. And then once you have the sensing or the confidence that you have a solid plan, then you just need to execute. And military operations in golf are very similar. That no plan on the military side, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. Golf probably very similar. You could be standing on the tee, it could be absolutely calm, and when you take the swing, all of a sudden a gust of wind comes up, and that ball is now finding itself in a location that you had not intended, or much further away from what you anticipated. So you have to be able to call some audibles. You have to be able to adjust to that, and mentally be able to adjust to that, and take it in stride. And I think that gets to the resiliency and self-discipline that I think good golfers have, because we all know, it's very rare that you're hitting good shot after good shot after good shot.
I think it goes back to what we just discussed on, if you have a very strong, you develop your routine towards very strong, you're disciplined enough to stick to it, then even if your plan doesn't fall into place the way you had hoped, then you can fall back on the discipline in your routine, and you can persevere through whatever setback you might have, whether you hit it in the woods or you hit it in the water. It's like, okay, instead of extending yourself too far and getting frazzled and anxiety ridden, okay, let me step back, go through my routine again. Here's what I'm supposed to do. Here's what I'm going to do, and then you execute that.
And we've seen that. We've seen that exactly on, particularly on the PGA. I'm always impressed when a pro, which you don't often see, a pro hit one out of bounds or double cross one into the water. Mm-hmm. But they hit that next shot, which is always impressive. And perhaps in the next hole they're making birdie. So I think that's always that's a very strong indication of their mental toughness and their resilience.
The bounce back category is what they.
That's right. Yeah. And I think we've all golfers, pro and amateur, that you've grown up where there's been days where you just as soon throw that putter into the pond or snap an iron or two. And I certainly have felt that way. But my brother and I both kind of had this understanding early on. We growing up and being around a golf course and playing junior golf and then high school golf, is that when it came to that, you're just going to kind of take it. You're just going to suck it up, understand that it's just maybe not, the day's just not going well for you. You're going to keep working hard. You dig in, try every shot, and then when the last hole is completed, you just put the clubs in the car and look forward to the next opportunity.
Go home to your made bed.
Yeah.
And say,
and not right. Go home to your
okay.
made bed. That's right. And take satisfaction in that. And not have to look back and go, man, I a bunch of temperamental theatrics on that hole, and that didn't serve me well for the next 3 holes. My blood pressure was up. I was all ticked off, and I was trying to hit every shot, 300 yards. And
don't let one tactical error compound itself.
That's exactly right. Yes. Understand and frankly anticipate that things will go wrong, and think about how you're going to react to them ahead of time. Mm-hmm. One of the whether I knew the officer or the enlisted Marine personally or not, you learn a great deal from Marines, or at least I have. And I remember General Pace, who was a former chairman of the Joint Chiefs, say that when he would wake up in the morning, and I think I'm quoting him almost exactly as he would say it, but as he was shaving, he would think about the possibilities or the potential of maybe a contentious issue or a very serious conversation, which you could expect that he was probably involved in a few of those. Mm-hmm. And he would already anticipate the contents of that conversation and how he might react to a response or a particular presentation or a particular position of somebody that was, for instance, on the other side of the table. And that helped him, as I recall, and it's been several years, but that helped him kind of prepare himself for the day. So when you do confront those situations, it's not completely new. It's something that you've thought about and already prepared for. Gets to the preparation. So
One of the simplest things, going back, keeping it very simple with routines and so forth, but one that I always found interesting, I actually did a video on how to mentally prepare for your round, and making your bed was one of them after many years ago, seeing the speech by the Admiral. But the other one was, and I don't see this talked about very often in the Marines, but you see it in all the documentaries and in all the movies, that when that horn goes off in the morning, your butt needs to be out of bed. In other words, you're not laying around in bed procrastinating. You're not thinking about what you're going to do. It's as soon as the alarm goes off, if you're in civilian life or if you're going to play around, you get a round of golf that day. When the alarm goes off or when your eyes open, that's when you get out of bed.
Yeah.
Because it turns your brain on immediately to start functioning and accepting the challenges or going after the challenges of that day.
Right.
Is that part of what's instilled as part of the routines? Is when that bugle or horn, correct me again if I'm wrong, not to my Marine lingo.
No, I get you.
But when that goes out and you need to get out of bed, is that part built into the routine?
It is.
Situation?
I saw it in. It certainly was for me. I mean, there's a number of examples I could give. I saw it in my son, who I'm very proud of him. He's a fine young man, and again, he's a Marine corporal. He's a machine gunner. He was a typical high school student. He played football, so he was involved in discipline type of activities, and he was a very solid student. But it wasn't uncommon for him to sleep in and sleep in several hours. Now today, if you asked him, he can't stand to sleep past 6 o'clock in the morning, and that's probably sleeping in for him. The normal reveille or wake up time for Marines is 5:30, but he doesn't. He likes to get up and get moving. I do too. It certainly is something that is ingrained in you. It's inculcated in Marines. If in garrison, for instance, you're getting up early and you're going to work. Personally, and I think a lot of Marines do this, even it could be on a weekend or a weekday. But personally, I believe in, and this is not original thought. A lot of military special operations speakers that I've listened to, they'll talk about something as simple as make sure that your physical training attire is laid out for you in the morning, and you've got your alarm set. And when that alarm goes off, kind of alluding to what you were just speaking to, get up, get your physical training attire on, and get moving.
Well, yeah, that's being prepared. You're doing it the night before, and there's nothing else to do. So your brain is focused on one mission in the military, and then on golf, it's okay. My mission, so to speak, is to play as well as I can play.
Right.
And that if I can limit more distractions and variables, the more efficient I'm going to be.
That's right.
And I don't think that a whole higher caliber players understand. I don't think that the higher handicappers or the people who aspire to be better golfers understand that. And it goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, that the smallest, simplest things that you can do lead to bigger and better things. And if you can't do the small things, how are you going to do the big things?
Right. And when you think about it, using the physical training example, you lay out your gear, you lay out your running shoes and shorts and shirt and all that. And when you get up in the morning, you're not thinking about really putting them on. You're just putting them on, because the larger goal, the larger mission is to get moving, get some physical training in. And a lot of people are on very tight schedules, working, etc. So your goal is to maximize that hour of physical training that you have to start your day, if that's what your routine is, or at the end of the day. So yeah, that preparation, that attention to detail is. I don't think it's being overstating it. That's. I believe people. A lot of people do like that level of regimentation, and because it affords them other things, which is the opportunity to perform physical training and maintain their health and feel good about themselves. And of course, there's been a lot of study about the endorphins that result from good physical training, and how people approach their days maybe in a better mental attitude than if they had not performed physical training. So there's a lot of
the discipline and the routine always equate to more freedom.
Yes.
You're in better health. You're more focused. Your job does better. Your personal life, everything.
So tying it back to military training, and in my case, my experience with young and older Marines, that type of preparation builds confidence. You just intuitively know what to do, and again, you have to always be prepared for the what if.
Mm-hmm.
And be able to think about what audibles you would call under what circumstances, and that gets to my point about reading history and doing, reviewing tactical scenarios, because there are a lot of commonality. There's a lot of commonality out there, and you can see patterns in decision making based upon what events have taken place, and so
it's similar in teaching that because people will say, well, how different is it teaching a tour caliber player, a tour player versus someone who's a 15 handicap? And the easiest way for me to explain it is it's like with a higher handicap, it's like looking through a giant bay window outside.
Right.
With an exceptionally good player, it's like looking through a pinhole, because they're swinging so fast, and most of it is so efficient, but you're looking for something very, very small that can create a problem throughout.
Right.
But Sports Illustrated a number of years ago did a very long study and article on athletes. They used baseball hitters in general. Are great hitters, home run hitters, high average hitters, are they born or do they develop it? And then they went through all the sports, and what they found out was that it's in that sport and in teaching, because we're dealing with motion, that it's pattern recognition, which is exactly what you said, recognizing where enemy has stations set up and so forth. And the faster you can recognize things, you can eliminate certain things right away. So, for example, for a pitcher, batters, per the article, always said that they're taught to look at the ball behind a pitcher's head to see where his fingers are on it.
Right.
So that you go from an unlimited amount of places that the ball can be thrown. If he can only throw a curveball based off where his fingers are positioned, well, the batter's going to look in a smaller area, and then based off how his leg moves, he can eliminate another certain. So the best batters are looking in a very small area for that ball to be based off the pitcher's movement. And I think that holds true in martial arts. I know it holds true in golf as I look at players. If they move a certain way, then I can eliminate a whole bunch of things that they're going to do.
Well, and what you're also getting at is finding an advantage. So on the baseball side, being able to recognize a pitcher's hand position and his fingers, and being able to potentially identify whether he's got a knuckleball coming at you or whether he's throwing a split finger fastball is important. That may give that batter, if they're capable of determining that, an advantage. On the military side, being able to look down at a map where your intelligence specialists have laid out what they believe is the enemy's, and you never have a complete and total picture, I'll tell you that. Just like I don't think you would ever have a complete and total picture just because of the rapidity of movement for a baseball player, for a pitcher, but you see some small elements that you can intuitively put together with some other ones and try to get get to a decision. And that advantage on the military side is that you're making decisions because there's another decision maker on the other side that is your opponent. You're in martial arts, as we were talking earlier. You're trying to gain an advantage and get in within their decision loop, if you will. Make your decisions faster than theirs. That is an advantage, and then apply your resources to be able to achieve what you want to achieve, whether it's a decision in an MMA bout or whether it's a decision on what you believe is coming at you out of a pitcher's hand, or what you believe is the right course of action tactically for in a military scenario. Right. So I do definitely see correlation to all those.
So I spoke to the teaching side. Now on the playing side, where somebody might be sitting at home saying, well, they're talking military, they're talking baseball, they're talking instruction. How do I do this from playing? Okay, live recognition. Okay, if you're chipping, you're hitting out of the rough. Is your ball sitting down? Is it sitting slightly up? Is it sitting a lot up?
Right. Understanding
that is going to determine your plan. And then that gets into your routine and your discipline, everything that we just talked about.
Sure.
So, and we could go on for.
Well, how many times have we hit a golf shot and then and then reminded ourselves that we didn't take into account the lie, or we didn't take into account that the grain, the green and the grain were going away from us. And you kind of, you figuratively kind of kick yourself and go, boy, I need to get my head in the game, so to speak. And that's kind of how I see
those
that.
are those little things.
Yeah.
I mean, people, some people come out and say, or young people in particular, usually that are wanting to go to the next level, whether they want to play in college or they want to turn pro.
Yeah.
And they said, well, what do I need to do to do this? And I said, okay, you do this. Well, no, I mean, there's nothing bigger. They're looking for that pot of gold. There is no pot of gold.
No. And I would just add that, we've been talking about what perhaps a military leader, his thought process, or his or her thought process, what they go through, a batter. But for a golfer, I think what you want to achieve, or the level you want to get to in terms of your thought process, is that when you are approaching a shot, you're looking at the lie, you're looking at the green. Let's say you're getting ready to hit a fairly short chip or a wedge or something like that. You're looking at the elements of the problem that you're trying to solve, so to speak, without becoming overly technical and starting to get yourself kind of all wrapped too tight. You're assessing the lie, you're assessing the yardage, you've got an indication, you've got some sensing of whether you've got some wind working against you or for you. You've got an idea of how that green is shaped, and whether where the pin is and how it's sloped, and all that is just very it's a fairly quick or rapid assessment, and then you execute the shot based upon your skills. And I think there's a lot of correlation between how you would approach a golf shot and how you would approach problem solving in many respects. I mean, that's
how many of your routines from your Marine days do you still adhere to?
I admittedly, I've got some work to do. I just alluded to hitting a shot and then walking up on the green and going, hey dummy, down grain, and the green slopes away. I mean, you didn't take that into account. You flew the ball in there, too far. So probably 50-50, I would say. I mean, that's not a particularly great report card, but the fact that I'm aware of that, I think, is important.
First step, right, is understanding
that's
that you're
right.
not doing it.
I would tell you that one of the things that I work to do, one, I have great respect for the game, love the game, and I know the game is, one day you can go out there and you can really have a great round, and the next day, and you hear this on the PGA Tour as well, when you see somebody go really deep, a really great round, and it's always hard to put together another really good round, and it's very impressive when they are able to do something that is even remotely close. But I think it gets to, one of the things that I do lean on is just kind of the mental discipline, mental toughness. You just got to hang in there. There's no quit. There's no temperamental theatrics and just kind of throwing the club, or I take a little pride in that you just kind of grind it out. And sometimes grinding it out means is that you may be getting a big number on a hole, but it's not one where you're just batting the ball to get it closer and closer to the hole. You're trying on each shot, even though you know that you're going to walk away with a number, because you may have hit the tee ball into the water, or you double crossed it out of bounds or something like that. I think it's just important to stay in it. Don't quit.
Yeah,
keep
because once you take yourself out of it, that's it. It's over.
Yeah.
If you're in it, you never know what can happen.
That's right.
You didn't expect to hit a bad shot. Now you're not expecting to hit a good shot. You just might do it.
That's right.
And that can kickstart your round again.
And I think that mental thought is an important one. Is that anything can happen, good and bad, on a golf shot. But if it's not going particularly well, who knows? You may hit that bunker shot and hole it. And I think most golfers have experienced something like that, where they've just stayed with it, and lo and behold, where they thought they were going to have to dig it out of the bunker and then two putt, they end up knocking it in. That can happen. We all understand that it's probably the exception and not the norm, but who knows? And I think equally important is that it carries over to the next hole. That positive mental attitude is the bridge to the next hole.
It's the first step.
It's
It's the making your bed. It's the getting up when your eyes open.
And a part of that, I think, mental discipline is being able to, when you do have a hole that really has kind of gone sideways on you, that you're able to close that door when you're on the next tee. And that is one area, admittedly, where I feel I need to do a better job. I need to play each hole, and the good golf rounds that I've had is where I've been able to. I wasn't thinking about anything in the past in terms of the holes. I was focused. I was in the moment. We hear that a lot. Be present, be in the moment. I was thinking about playing each shot and not worrying about what putt I may have missed or how that tee ball was, 2 holes prior. So I think that's very important. On a final point, and I had, we talked early on about mentors and role models. I had the great fortune of growing up again in Hawaii, and one of the friends of the family was a World War II veteran Navy pilot. And this gentleman was an exceptional golfer, and he was an exceptional golfer up until his 80s. I think he was 75, 74, and shot his age. That's how good he was.
Pretty good.
I remember he had a beautiful Hogan bag, Hogan irons, and he just was just a superb golfer. But one of the things that he taught me, or reinforced with me, was kind of the presence on the golf course, and he was calm and composed, and he I won't do it justice, but he essentially said, you gotta accept birdies and bogeys and kind of treat them both the same. You try to minimize the highs and lows, and that's kind of counterintuitive, because in other sports, you want to get really kind of hyped up, and that energy and that motivation can be a force multiplier for teams or even individuals. But in golf, it's
the opposite.
It's the opposite. It's keeping that kind of composure and your blood pressure at the right level and keeping a positive mental outlook. And he epitomized that, and that's what I always respect. And in addition to being an absolutely superb golfer, he was he was a fine gentleman, but his presence on the golf course was just a joy to be around.
Does that maintaining of consistency, does that roll over? Does that correlate, is a better word to use, to something like the Marine Corps, where if you're a battle situation, so to speak, that's going to drag on?
Yeah.
If you're getting highs and lows, you go high, you got to settle down at some point, or you'll never last. You can't run in the red constantly.
Right.
So is that something that you guys work on, or is it, or that you teach, or is it integrated into the routines and discipline and so forth?
It's something that certainly is, I guess, it's more of something that you would be mentored on by more experienced Marines, and certainly those, we oftentimes have professional military education sessions where we bring in older or retired Marines, once a Marine, always a Marine, but bring in Marines that have served for many years and have been in different situations to include combat, and have them have question and answer sessions. They provide a presentation about their combat experience, because that's what we train to do, right? That's what Marines train to do. Is
right.
Our mission is to do the bidding for the nation when that needs to be done, and that means that the mission of the Marine Rifle Squad is to locate, close with, and destroy the enemy. That's it. We make no bones about it. So, but leading in that environment can be very challenging. You're right. The highs, you can be exposed to situations that can cause emotions and temperament and just kind of the energy of the situation to really kind of skyrocket. Leaders are trained, are mentored to be the calm within the storm. You've got to be able to think. Particularly Marine officers are expected to be able to think when things are going very poorly around them, or appear to be coming, things are starting to go the wrong way. They have got to be able to think on their feet, be calm, composed, not only for their own ability to think and lead and make decisions in a timely fashion and make good decisions. And again, we talked about intuition and pattern recognition, but also because you've got a lot of young Marines looking at you going, okay, what are we going to do now? And it's the leader that is capable of instilling confidence in them that, okay, this is not going as well as we expect, but we're going to win here. We're going to make this work. And that instilling a confidence, and I'm kind of focused on the military leadership side here. We bring it back to golf, but it's amazing what you can tie it to any organization. It's amazing what your people will do when they have a sense of confidence in their leadership and in their mission. They'll take the initiative and they'll make good things happen. And that was one of the tremendously rewarding aspects of being a Marine, is being around Marines and men and women who are committed and make good things happen in some pretty tough situations, in some pretty demanding missions. So
in the most dire of situations.
Absolutely, yeah. So it gets to the mental toughness and the self-discipline, and it gets to your values and principles and your faith, what you hold near and dear, what you lean on under tough times or during tough times. So all those things are very, very important they're very important to people. I realize that they're very important to being Marines. Being a Marine, they're central to how well you can get the job done and perform your particular leadership role. So, yeah.
Let's move into golf in particular.
Yeah.
Your life in golf. Let's start there. We started with your life in the military and how it started. So how did you get started in golf?
So I'll never forget. I was in Quantico. I was 7 years old. So my dad, again, was a Marine, and he actually commanded the basic school where all Marine officers go through, and he loved the game. He started a little bit later in life and developed some muscle memory that probably wasn't, in today, as we have all the opportunity to look at the golf swing, his was probably a little bit more handsy. He was maybe a little bit more Lee Trevino-ish, if you will. But he put the passion, the spark of golf, and my brother and I in Quantico when I was 7. The golf pro by the name of Dennis O'Leary, I'll never forget his name, cut off a 7-iron and put it in my hand. And that just kind of started it. And I started playing in Quantico, and fortunately, again, I had a father who loved the game, so wherever we went, as much as possible, we would try to find a golf course and play. Now, eventually finding myself in Hawaii at Kaneohe Bay at one of the more beautiful golf courses in the military, it was a great opportunity, and I worked at the golf course for several years. So I've been around golf all my life, and have, it is a passion. It's something that I love to play golf. I can say, I'm 54 years of age now. I still have very high expectations, and I keep on working at it. But I realize that probably the best years of golf are behind me, but the reward and the enjoyment are still now, here and now. And the best years in terms of ability and proficiency in the game perhaps are behind. But
did you have any mentors or teachers in golf the way your dad and his contemporaries were for your military career?
That gentleman that I was talking about, that was the retired, he was certainly a teacher and mentor. And then the golf pro out at K-Bay at the time, a gentleman by the name of Terry Young, was a great mentor, and he would teach about the game and provide lessons.
Were some of the things that they taught you, because they were obviously were connected to the military?
Yeah.
Were they as much golf lessons as they were life lessons, and that you might have used as you got into the Marine Corps?
I would say the gentleman, again, his name was Howard Culbreth. He went by Cully, and I admired this gentleman so much that if I had another son, I was going to call him Cully. That's how much I admired this gentleman. And again, I had a terrific father and a great role model, and Cully was almost kind of like an uncle. Cully was one that would provide kind of the life skills and mentoring. The pro was the one that was providing the technical, the swing keys and the review, and he was talking golf in its purest form. Cully was talking golf relative to self-discipline and composure and treating birdies and bogeys just about the same, and staying in the moment and closing the door to the previous hole that may not have gone so well for you. And I would also tell you, Cully was the one that would, in Hawaii you have trade winds, so he would teach about certain skills and creativity is what I'm trying to get at, and keeping the ball down or shaping the ball based upon trade winds and the golf course that we were playing. So yeah, there was a very technical side from the golf pro, which was all good, and then there was the kind of the good uncle mentoring, who was also a very proficient golfer, mentoring on the golf course. So
when did you know you were hooked? When did you get the golf bug?
Well, I would say when I was probably elementary school, junior high in Hawaii, and just as you start to grow and gain a little bit more strength and feel more comfortable with the golf swing. Of course, at that age, you're a flat belly, you're limber. You can play 36 holes without and carry your bag without even thinking twice about it.
Not even being sore the next day.
Yeah, not even being sore. And again, it was a great environment because the beach was right outside. Right along the golf course was actually along the beach. So I mean, it would be a day where I would play. I'd go to the beach, come back, play 18 holes, and then I had the afternoon shift at, for instance, 2:30. This is during the summertime when I wasn't in school, and work at the golf course. So it was it was one of those kind of lives. It was a nice lifestyle, is what I'm trying to say. But I was hooked probably at that point, and started to play junior golf in Hawaii. And as we've talked, I particularly liked playing competitive golf, although I don't necessarily consider myself a good competition golfer. But I do like the excitement, the challenge of playing competition golf, and following the rules closely, putting everything out, and at the end of the day, seeing how you did relative to everybody else that's in the tournament. Although on that particular point, I remember my father saying, "Hey, that's you in the golf course," and then you just post the score and see how it all kind of sorts out. And then I think that was always good advice. So
one of the questions that somebody asked me to ask you is overcoming fear. So obviously, in a military situation, and you're at the highest levels of fear because you're dealing. You and they are dealing with loss of life. Is what can happen if things aren't carried out correctly or as planned. But in golf, there is a fear. Or let me back up. So that's something that I'm assuming is dealt with, or processes are in place and how to deal with it and so forth on a military side. If that is the ultimate consequence of an action, I would have to assume that how you deal with that fundamentally can also be used in golf. So for example, if it's a beginner and they're afraid to hit over water, or they're an accomplished player and they're in a tournament and they're afraid to hit a shot because they know they're somewhere near the lead. Since you're a golfer and you have played competitive and you've obviously been in very important situations in the military, can you speak to how the military might attack is a bad word, but I'm going to say deal with fear, and then how you would use those principles in golf? How do you address it?
Sure. I'll first say that I spent over 30 years as a Marine. A very small portion of that time is actually in combat situations where you would experience that type of, your awareness and your attention are such to that extreme, if you will, or and even fear. I mean, I don't think anybody that performs those type of duties would say that there hasn't been time where they weren't a little anxious or fearful. And our history, our military history, is replete with examples of, it's everybody experiences those emotions. It's just what you do when you do experience them, and then that gets to training and your personal discipline, and it gets to your personal faith and values and things of that nature. So, but to draw that, a very small percentage of that time and correlate that to, for instance, a tee shot in a very tight fairway with water, and perhaps you're playing, you're having a pretty good round, and all the thoughts that go into your head about how you don't want to spoil that round, and that can add anxiety and generate perhaps some fear. I think you address that in very similar fashion. You fall back on some routines that hopefully you've instilled. One, not only mentally but physically. So mentally, you're giving yourself a positive thought. You've picked a target out in the fairway. You're focused on that target. You understand that there may be water left or water right, and there may be some hazards on the golf course that you don't want to hit it into. But that shouldn't be your last thought. Your last thought ought to be the target that you're trying to, that you're aiming at, that's going to put you in the best position. And I do believe in that type of mental process. And then let me just a quick correlation to how we train young Marines. It would be too easy. We pride ourselves. The Marine Corps prides itself in having the best marksmen in the world. And one of the things we teach every young Marine to shoot the service rifle, and how we coach them and teach them is through that positive reinforcement. It's too easy to say, "Hey, you're jerking the trigger, or you're manhandling the muzzle," or that's not necessarily the most productive way of teaching somebody. Really, the approach is, I want you to squeeze that trigger slowly into the rear. I want you to take a deep breath and pull that trigger on the natural respiratory pause. And I know this is a lot of technical stuff relative to marksmanship, but just and how that's delivered from a coach to a young Marine is important, and I think how it's delivered within your own head when you're on a tee box is also important. I want you to, you're thinking to yourself, once you believe that you've got the right stance and the right grip, and that you've taken a couple deep breaths because this is maybe a little bit more anxious moment on the golf course than what you've experienced in the last couple of holes. Now you're telling yourself, there's my target, and I want you to take the club back in good tempo, not rush it, and then just put a natural good swing on it. And that may be the difference between hitting the ball somewhere close to your target and completely, self-imploding and snapping it left or cutting it right and really being in a tough situation. So I think I definitely think there is a correlation there. On the golf side, it's you, and it's your mental thoughts, internal. I mean, you're not saying these things out loud; you're thinking them, and you're going through your kind of mental checklist, that second nature, that intuition, that pattern recognition of what you believe is going to allow you to hit the best shot that you can. And then at some point, you just have to relax and commit, and put the best swing on, and then you live with the circumstances of the consequences of your actions in that regard.
So it all goes back to focusing on the mission, or focusing on what you want to, and you're not looking at variables that are there to distract you, which is kind of what architects do, right? When they build a golf course, they're going to put things aesthetically in certain strategic places that get you focus on that instead of what you're looking to accomplish.
Right.
Yeah, and it never ends. Golfers at the highest level.
How often do we step on a tee box and look at how that tee box is oriented, its right. attitude, and if you assume it's going right down the middle of the fairway, you're going to be wrong on more occasions than not. So, yeah.
Is it harder to improve as a soldier or a golfer?
I would say as a golfer, yeah. I certainly would say now as a golfer. Yeah, I think the terrific thing about golf and the challenging thing about golf is that it's individual. It's all you. I mean, everything relies upon you and your ability and your thought processes and your understanding of the game. And the great thing about military organizations, or organizations in general that consider themselves good and lead and take care of their people, is that you have that organization to help foster and promote standards and reinforce the desired behavior and take care of people and get the mission accomplished. So you have the strength of the organization, right? And everybody contributes to that, or should contribute to that. On the golf course, as we all know, and particularly in competitive golf, when you step up on the first tee, it's you. And I think that's also a part of the most rewarding aspects of golf, is that it's you. So when you do play well, you know, that's always a very rewarding feeling. And when you don't play well, I think that's why golfers, you know,
so self-deprecating.
Yeah, I think golf certainly teaches some humility.
Oh, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Obtaining success. But in doing a number of interviews and talking to a number of different people, there is a distinct difference, and of course this would be in the military as well, where you're starting in basic training or boot camp, and you're getting into tactical situations. But obtaining success versus dealing with success, and the differences in the two, that's a very fine line. And I just bring that up kind of as a preliminary to the question, is how do you, as a leader in the Marine Corps, and you have men and women under you, and you have a successful strategy or plan or battle that came out, how do you keep them humble enough to continue, and that you don't let their ego get too big, you don't let them feel 100% fulfilled, or else that could be detrimental to the next mission?
Well, I think in the military life, and particularly, you know, my experience as an infantry Marine, is that when we've accomplished something very well, when we've accomplished the mission, and I'm proud to say that the commanders that I work for, and hopefully I would like to think that my Marines would say the same thing, is, you know, you're accomplishing it more times than not, because one, that's mission accomplishment is everything, and it gets to all our previous conversation about preparing and putting all the right resources to include people in the right positions to set the conditions for success. Just in the military walk of life, and again as an infantry Marine, as an infantry officer, the requirements are demanding enough that when you accomplish the mission, you know there's going to be another set of requirements coming down, and that, I think, naturally keeps you humble. You take great reward in your accomplishments at that time. You take great pride in your fellow Marines and in your competency and your proficiency and professionalism as an organization. But you know that you can't rest on your laurels. There's another mission coming.
There's always something else coming.
There's always something coming down, and it could have gone very well today, and it can go pretty bad tomorrow. And in many respects, it goes bad, and you may not have any control over how that it went bad. It's something that you simply have to quickly understand, and how you're going to adapt to that, and so many things are out of your control.
Is that something that the in the military, that the experienced Marines would you try to have them relate that to the younger ones?
Absolutely.
Because in golf, you really have to learn that off experience. Okay, so let's say you won a tournament, you think you're going to go to the next tournament and just play just as good, and then you miss a cut, or you play horrendous, you come in bottom of the pack. I think golf, you have to. People will tell you that, but you're not going to understand it. I get in the military, that's kind of, from our talk earlier, that's kind of developed early on, that
Absolutely.
You listen to elder statesmen because they have the experience.
You do. If you're smart, you will.
In both.
That's right. Absolutely. And we've seen it on the PGA Tour, where a pro has a fairly young pro finally breaks through, is the phrase, that they've had enough experience and been under enough pressure where they finally break through, and then their comfort level, they're now familiar with that pressure. They now understand it. There's always uncertainty, and that's something that we talk a lot about in the military side of things, is that uncertainty is something that you have to deal with. You have to be have to realize that you're never going to have the complete picture. You may not ever have all the resources that you need. You may, the things like the weather can cause problems and can turn very quickly, and that type of uncertainty can. We also talk about fog and friction. Things become very difficult. And particular environments that the military operates in, and that gets to the mental and physical toughness and using your brain to to think through things, and sometimes very quickly, and solve problems. On the golf course, I think there's always uncertainty, and you apply what you know. And you try to repeat that when it's going well, and when it's not going well, you're going through a series of problem-solving steps to try to determine how you can quickly get it back online and get it going. So, yeah.
So in the little bit of research that I could find on you, the best I could extrapolate is you have multiple master's degrees?
I have two, yeah.
Two, both in strategic
studies, right?
Studies?
Yeah, national security.
So how much do you strategize or lay out a strategy for your game? Let's say you're going to play in the club championship at the Legends of Paris Island. How much do you lay out a strategy for yourself?
I don't know that I really lay out too much of a strategy. I think I try to approach a golf hole. It's probably broken down by golf hole, and where I would like to position the ball, as I think most golfers do. I don't know that I lay out a strategy. If there is anything kind of strategic, and when I enter into a tournament, or I look at how I would, how I would like to approach a tournament, it's probably more along the intuitive side about being rested, having the right gear, making something as simple as making sure I've got 14 clubs in the bag and not 15, or I'm not leaving something out. It's about thinking ahead about when something does go wrong, and I don't know that any golfer who plays in a tournament that something doesn't go, there's something is going to go sideways at some point in time. How I'm going to react to that, and oftentimes that's just, hey, be prepared for the uncertainty, or be prepared for the unexpected, or be prepared for something to maybe not go quite your way, bad bounce, something of that nature, and how are you going to react to that? And it gets back to that gentleman Cully, that in terms of your composure and your acceptance of the game. You hear that a lot on the tour as well. I mean, you hear pros talk about, I'm gonna take what the golf course is willing to give
right.
me.
You can't control it. It's not. You can't be perfect in this game.
Right. You can go out and for the pros, they go out and make a lot of pars and perhaps not as many birdies as they would have liked, and in some cases maybe the birdies are coming in floods. Who knows? But they're going to take what the golf course gives them. And what that really means to me is that they're going to apply their best skills, their best talents, and maintain their composure. And just, you hear the term, I'm just going to be patient, and all that makes sense to me. So if there was any strategy, that it's probably along those lines. So
let's go on to another section, and that's what you're obviously very, very accomplished at, and that's leadership and trust. And I printed off again what limited info I could find on you. Your current position, you're Vice President of Administrative Services, Technical College of Low Country. But as I looked at some of the things on your LinkedIn profile, Chief of Staff, you're a leader in US AFRICOM, if I get that right.
Right.
Assistant Chief of Staff, you're Chief of Special Operations Division, you're Chief of the 2nd Marine Division, Commanding Officer, Executive Officer, where you're always leading, directing, another commanding officer, another executive officer. So you obviously have been a leader for a very long time. In my opinion, leadership requires two things, followers and trust. And you don't get one without the other. So if for this section, for someone out there who might be wondering, well, what does this have to do with anything? Okay, so you have player and caddy, you have teacher and student, pros and assistants, parents and children. Okay. Okay, we're back. So as we were going over, you have been in position of leadership for a very long time. Had a lot of people that you were leading and following. And as I was saying, there's my opinion. You need two things for leadership: followers and trust. And then as that relates to somebody listening to this in golf, you have a player-caddy relationship, a teacher, a student, a head professional assistant, parent-child, boss, employee, etc. And in the military, in the Marines in particular, and I remember listening to a story. There was a lecture I was at where the gentleman was interviewing or going to interview a general, Marine general. And at the time that the general was running about 15 minutes late, and his assistant came in and told this person, they said, well, the general's running late, which is unheard of for Marines, right? Always on time.
I can't speak about generals, though. I know they have very busy schedules, so yeah.
So as the story goes, when the general did come in and he apologized and he said, well, we have an issue with a young man that fell asleep while he was on his station post. And this lecturer said, well, excuse me for asking, but is that bad? And the general went on to tell him said everything that we do is built off of trust. And if we have a breakdown of trust, the whole system comes down. So if you could just speak, obviously you're a very accomplished leader. You've led men and women into battle and so forth, and led them in all categories. Just like to kind of get your thoughts on the best ways to be a leader, the best ways to develop trust, because that resonates in everything that we do: golf, life, military, any business people out there that might be listening, etc. Mm-hmm. So if you can just speak to your experience on that topic.
Well, the example of the Marine general being a few minutes late because of that type of issue, that I could completely understand, and frankly, that would be what I would expect the answer to be from that Marine. Forget about the fact that he's a general, whether he's just the fact that he's a Marine. That's mm-hmm. what I would expect. Trust goes hand in hand with personal integrity and responsibility, and using that example or that scenario where a Marine falls asleep on post, which is a incredibly egregious error on that Marine's part. Some may embellish, okay, you fell asleep on post, but if that Marine's falling asleep on post in peaceful, North Carolina, that is certainly an egregious act. If he's falling asleep on post in Fallujah, Iraq, or in Al Anbar province, Afghanistan, that can mean the lives of his fellow Marines. Mm-hmm. Because that Marine has been entrusted with standing that post and staying alert. All Marines understand 11 general orders. I won't rattle those off right now, but within those 11 general orders are principles and standards to live by, and many of them relate to security and the trust that is put in an individual in that type of situation. So coming back to the broader point about leading people, I absolutely believe that in order to be an effective leader, you have to instill trust in those that you're leading. They have to have implicit trust in you and your actions, what you say, what you do, the example you set has to support that trust and that confidence in your abilities as a leader. And it goes both ways. And a leader has to trust that in the case of Marines, and I think this goes across many organizations and military organizations, the leader has to have trust and ensure that those that they lead understand that they're trusted. Young Marines need to know that their leaders trust them to do the right thing at the right time for the right reasons, and just as they trust their leaders to do the right thing at the right time for the right reasons. So trust is absolutely foundational, and it gets to personal integrity, as I mentioned. It gets to the core values of honor, courage, and commitment of the naval forces and the Marine Corps, specifically in my case. So, yeah, those that are led need to trust their leaders, and the leaders need to trust those that they lead are committed to the organization, are going to do the right thing. And I would even take that, some of the really kind of examples of trust that resonate with me are when, again, very serious situations where I'm looking at Marines that are junior to me, and maybe not by much. I'm looking at, for instance, an operations officer that is on my staff, and he's telling me something, and there's uncertainty. Uncertainty abounds, but he's giving me the best information he can, and I trust that he's giving me the very best information that he can in order for us to be able to move forward with the mission. And again, there's things that we don't know, but what he's telling me is the best that he can offer or she can offer, and we're going to move forward based on that. And they need to understand that we're going to make decisions based upon the information that they're providing me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make decisions based upon, and that's where that trust comes into play. I don't think you can have effective organizations without trust.
Oh, I agree 100%.
Trust gets to how we treat each other. What value we put on each other's contributions to the organization. What value we place or we put in our people just as human beings. So integrity and trust are very closely linked, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's almost mind-boggling to look at some institutions today in our country, around the world, and you look at how there isn't any trust based off what leadership does. The rank and file, so to speak, does not have trust going up, and there's no protection, and either way, and it's been totally diluted, and it almost makes you wonder if people did just the simplest things, like you just said, the integrity and the honor and so forth, where would humanity be now? Look where we are now. It's a great place, but where could we be if more people adhered to that?
Well, and I think, the larger the organization, the further away leaders get from where the organization is actually carrying out its mission. And if you're not aware, if you don't remain aware of that, if you're not cognizant of what can happen, that detachment can cause problems. And frankly, I think organizations that run into problems have leaders that become more, there's no interest like self-interest, that old adage, and
Mm-hmm.
they become more interested in what they're getting out of the organization than what the organization's mission is, and how the leaders are taking care of the people of the organization, which are actually executing the mission or supporting the accomplishment of the mission. One of the things that I've always it's such a simple analogy, but one of the things that I absolutely love about the Marine Corps and have always taken great pride in is that, and we talked about officers versus enlisted, and we're kind of alluding to here taking care of people. A Marine officer eats last. When, for instance, if chow is brought out, if food is brought out to the field, they're eating dead last,
Mm-hmm.
as it should be. That newest, youngest Marine ought to be the first one in line. But the fact of the principle is that those young Marines, if I'm a rifle company commander and I have 180 Marines, and the mess chief happens to bring out hot chow one day when we're out training for several days, that company commander is eating last. His lieutenants are eating before him. Our staff NCOs, staff non-commissioned officers are eating before the officers. The sergeants are eating before the staff NCOs, and those young Marines are eating before everybody. And I think that's the right mentality.
Well, I agree, and I think you see that in the best organizations, the Marine being a hallmark of that, and you see that in the best businesses. You see it in the most well-run golf facilities. You see it in a lot of different avenues where things that are run very well, and then in the things that aren't well, whether they put on a facade or not, if you have the ability to know the behind the scenes, it's a complete opposite.
Yep.
And you're looking at it's like, how do they not put two and two together?
Yeah, I mean, it is perplexing to see, but it should be no surprise when organizations start to fail or start to come apart, or there's division internally, and there's disruptive behavior, et cetera.
That was kind of the question earlier that we could have got off on a whole nother tangent. Maybe
Absolutely.
we'll do that in another podcast.
It's a great leadership question, and a discussion you can have for hours. But I strongly believe that I don't care what mission you have, what organization you're a part of, if you don't know and take care of your people, then you're going to run into problems eventually. And when you do know and take care of your people, and what I mean by know, and I'll just expound on that for a moment, very quickly, we had the Weyerhaeuser group come down. When I was in San Diego as a captain, we had the Weyerhaeuser group come down from the Pacific Northwest, and they wanted to see how Marines train and their leadership principles and values and things of that nature. And we had a roundtable discussion toward the end of the day. And a number of the questions were delved into how well do you know your people on the floors of the Weyerhaeuser plant and this was a group from a particular plant that was running into some issues. I don't know that they were really having tremendous problems, but they wanted to kind of elevate their game and improve things. And one of the questions we asked was, how well do you know your people? Do you know that Mr. Smith or Mr. Jones on the line, is their wife ill? Do you know anything about their family? Do they have a handicapped child that has, special needs family member? And if you don't know those things, then you don't really know that individual that's working hard for you, or you expect to work hard on your floor. Tie that into a leader that does know who they are and is understanding that there may be some special requirements for that particular individual relative to a wife who has just been diagnosed with cancer or a special needs child, and how you're going to ensure that that person is properly led and taken care of. And my experience has been is that when people know that they're being taken care of, when somebody cares, they'll run through walls for you. Mm-hmm. They'll do great work for you because they are proud and find reward in being a part of an organization. And frankly, I think this is particularly rewarding for leaders, is that they feel that they have leaders that care, and they'll demonstrate initiative and proficiency and work an extra hour because they're committed. The mission is the mission, but they're committed to, they don't want to disappoint, or they want to make sure that they, in some way, shape, or form, kind of show their appreciation for being a member of that team and having a leader take care of them. So that loyalty goes both ways, and I think it's incredibly important.
Yeah, I think not to get too far off the subject, but today's corporate or business world gets away from that. And I remember listening to Sebastian Junger. And I think he did the documentary with Rest Repo.
Yeah.
But in one of his lectures, he was describing how, especially people in the military, when they get out and they go into today's corporate world and backstabbing for more or less for advancement, and that they don't comprehend that culture. And some people will even take time to go into like the Peace Corps. And now you're going to an area where everybody has to rely on each other, and you need to help and so forth. And they quickly come out of that PTSD because now they feel safe. They don't feel that threat from the person standing next to them.
I think, and again, like you said, not to get too far off afield on the main topic here, but I think military. LinkedIn is a great resource to be able to read about folks that are transitioning from active duty military, many after many years in uniform, and what they find when they get out to the business corporate world, et cetera. And I think they search for a sense of purpose and that esprit de corps, or that cohesion. And oftentimes I think they're not disappointed, perhaps, although some probably are, but they're finding that it's not quite the same, and that's not to disparage any organization or any walk of life. It's just to say that I think it speaks to some of the great reward that comes through military service if you're so inclined to do that, and if you do it for many years, you become accustomed to a sense of selfless service, or you should, if your organization is doing what it needs to do, and you get accustomed to that spirit of teamwork and this is a team effort, and I think incredibly important to have that in an organization.
There was a great book written on that, and I think there's a website and an organization called Small Giants. So companies that choose to be great instead of big, and it is a chapter after chapter of businesses, usually privately owned, that their goal is to do something with the employees that might keep them from going to a bigger level, but that's not their sole purpose. And if you get a chance, I'll send you that one.
And I bet you key to each of those organizations is a leader or a small group of leaders that are the catalyst for change or for promoting that type of atmosphere. And I think when it can spread like fire. I mean, you can start to attract the right people, or the people at least that believe and want to be a part of that. And that's really where you see those organizations take off. And you're right, they may be large in size, but they feel like small organizations because of the spirit and the camaraderie,
the culture.
The culture of the organization. Absolutely. So.
On trust, you were how many years in the service?
A little over 30.
Okay. What would Colonel Smith tell? I'll say PFC Smith. I know you didn't say
Second Lieutenant Smith.
And since we're out on trust, would Second Lieutenant Smith trust what Colonel Smith was telling him? In other words, what would you tell your 30-year-old younger self?
That's a very interesting question. I think if my second lieutenant self would listen, it would probably be a couple things. One, really take the time to enjoy what you're doing, even though there was times where it was very demanding training, or you're overseas and in situations that were not particularly something that you would enjoy. But take the time to enjoy kind of the larger, the broader reward that comes with being in the service that I was and being around the people that I was. So take the time. In other words, don't rush things. Hand in hand with that is work hard, have ambition, but temper that with other important, or through other very important, and in many cases more important things in life, which are family, children, certainly spouses. Do the things that kind of round you out in my case, as a man, that bring reward and are of value. Make sure you pay attention to those things.
Don't take them for granted.
Yeah, because I've even my father, who you can be so ambitious in any walk of life that you take those things for granted, and then they may not be there when you pop out on the other end. And I've seen that. I've had more seasoned, more experienced officers, senior officers mentor me as a member of a group of more junior officers on those type of things. I heard this early on, so I tried to live by it. Is don't believe anything in your performance evaluations. You're an average guy probably doing a big job. In my case, and I heard that from many commanders that I worked for, who I admired and respected, and they felt the same way about themselves. Is that don't believe,
don't forget you're a human being.
That's right, and don't drink your own bathwater. People are going to say nice things about you, and maybe you're doing a pretty good job, but don't ever forget that you're expected to do a good job every day, and don't become intoxicated with what people write about you. Just keep a sense of humility and keep yourself well-grounded and well-rounded. So I think Second Lieutenant Smith probably had the luxury of hearing a lot of that from Colonel Smith, because really what you're hearing now is kind of what I heard from my father and from other men. So that was a luxury that I had in many respects. I don't know that everybody had that, but I think I've met peers that have had similar benefit. And then take pride, in being a good man, and taking care of your family, and
that's pretty good stuff to live by.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Would he listen? Is the question that?
The question is, would he listen? Yeah, I would tell you, I would. Second Lieutenant Smith would. And there are probably some variations in there, because like any second lieutenant, even at the rank of captain, which is the best rank in the commission ranks of the Marine Corps, because you've been around a couple years, but you're still junior enough where you can make some mistakes and still survive, so to speak. But it's a great rank. Yeah, I think Second Lieutenant Smith would listen, and as I mentioned, he did listen in many respects because he had maybe not me talking to him, but he had people that share a lot of what I'm sharing right now with you that say the same thing. So,
how, with all you've accomplished, successful, family man, good kids, good everything there, your career in the military, your career as a civilian life, how do you stay motivated? How do you get out of bed in the morning?
Well, it goes back to that. I put my PT gear out, I put my physical training, and I get up, and because I do like to stay, in decent shape, and I like that because I feel better. I feel like I can, I want to be able to swing the golf club. I want to be, I want to be mobile. So that's a very small element, but that keeps me going. But I think as I've tried to teach my son, and I think my father tried to teach my brother and I, you just try to live life to the best you can, and you take care of those things that are important in your life. And in my case, again, family has always been very important. My service as a Marine officer was incredibly important. That's over, and that was going to end, and I knew that from the day that I first pinned on second lieutenant bars as I watched my father retire. And so that the Marine Corps is a relatively small portion of your life when you think about it. I think those that do retire usually spend somewhere in just over 20 years, and then there's the population that goes out to 30. But even 30 years is a relatively small portion of your life, and so you hang up the boots and you look for what's the next
challenge.
What's the next challenge? What's the next thing you can feel like you're living a life of purpose and take reward from it, and all the while, focused on family. I have 4 children, and technically 3 of them are already out of the house. They're going to go live their lives. So, and those great times we had when they were younger and we were, traveling as a family and I was on active duty were incredibly rewarding. And I take great reward in those memories, but I want to now continue to foster, good family life with my kids as young adults. And of course, I have a terrific wife who, we look forward to, God willing, a lot of years of being able to do what we want to do. So, yeah.
Kind of goes back to there's always another mission.
There is. Yeah. I mean, you got to live life, right? And you got to do it, and it won't happen all by itself. I don't think. You set conditions and you plan and you think, and you get up in the morning and make your bed. You go PT. You look forward to Saturday golf. You work hard. If you're employed, you work hard to serve your organization well. So it's important for me to feel like I'm serving my organization, and that when my organization pays me so many dollars for my service, I want to know that I've served the organization well, or to the best of my abilities. So
let's do some rapid fire.
Okay.
Simple stuff.
All right.
If you weren't a Marine, you would have been a blank. Fill in the blank.
Golf course manager.
That's pretty good. Caddy or cart?
Caddy.
Your bucket list golf course or courses, where would you like to play that you haven't?
Augusta National, St. Andrews. I think that's it.
Okay.
Those are the 2 bucket lists. Yep.
Do the Marines have the best uniforms?
Absolutely. No question.
Thought you might say
no
that.
question.
I had to throw an easy one in there.
And America thinks that too.
Right. Yeah. I think so.
Yeah.
Tiger or Jack?
Tiger.
All right. How many presidents have you met?
2.
Which ones?
President Bush and President Obama.
Pretty cool thing, I'd have to imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you could win one tournament in the world, whether it's the Paris Island Club Championship or any PGA Tour, any tournament around the world, which one would it be?
I'd like the U.S. Open.
Why does that not surprise me?
Yeah.
Best advice you were ever given or that you would give your kids?
Be a good man.
And the last one, if you had one mulligan in golf or life, what would it be? Or would you even need one?
Yeah, that's an interesting. I know it's rapid fire, so I would simply say, not how I try to live my life. So no regrets. From failures, I learn, and probably have the greatest learning. And from triumphs, I take a great deal of reward. So
cool. Well, you're not on social media, but if somebody wanted to reach out to you for advisement, questions on maybe some things we talked about today, what's the best way if someone wanted to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm the vice president for the Technical College of the Low Country, so you can certainly reach me at asmith@tcl.edu, which is found on our website. And if anybody has any interest out there in the technical college and what programs we provide, if you have young adults and kids in high school that want to take a look at our educational programs, it's a great opportunity here in the Low Country. So
perfect.
Yeah.
So I think after this talk, there was a lot of questions on, and yourself, we talked about that, but a lot of other people have said, well, the correlation between the Marines and golf. I think after today's discussion, I think those questions have been answered. I can't thank you enough for taking the time. Your service, your family service, all you've done for the country and helping the men and women that you've led. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pete. This has been a lot of fun, and I
fun.
greatly appreciate the opportunity. So
It's been awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed it, you can find more information on today's episode and other topics at golf360.blog. There you'll find the show notes and links related to this episode, as well as any other episode that we've done so far to date. If you're interested in improving your game and would like to learn more from yours truly by taking a private lesson, a half-day or multi-day school, club or putter fitting, you can reach me through the blog site or by email, pete@golf360.blog. So some of you may be asking, what is the golf paradigm? All you have to do is click on the homepage while on my blog site to discover how you can start playing better than you ever thought possible. Or you can simply sign up, again, on the blog page for my instructional videos where I give regular tips on all areas of the game to include the swing, club design and fitting, health, fitness and nutrition, the mental aspects, and equally as important, the integration of all those things together. I'm also on social media, and you can find me at The Golf Paradigm. That's PARADIGM. And I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, also under the same name, The Golf Paradigm. Facebook is usually the best way to reach me for questions and or comments, and I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say.